This is MaDora. She is a current studio artist, and she is actually a native of and to Atlanta, Georgia. She went to school and got her BFA at Auburn University with a concentration in drawing and printmaking. She received her MFA in painting from New York Academy of Art. If you are familiar with her work, you know that it has a lot to do with being outside, and that is very much a part of her youth and her growing up, but it also has a lot to do with the city and city living. So there is a lot of juxtaposition between city living and being outside, and her practice kind of takes those two things into consideration. So I will let MaDora have the floor, and I hope you all enjoy.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to everyone for coming today. I know it's really pretty outside, so I have some competition. Well, I'm in my studio for the first time after being away for 2 months. I've dashed in and out with a couple of supplies here and there, but really I have welcomed this unexpected break that I've had from being indoors, and wound up returning outside to work, which I've done through the years off and on, composing installations and photographing them in the city when I lived in New York. I haven't done that so much down here in the last 3.5 years since I've been back. But my really big project or foray into outdoor art and eco art and land art, earthworks, was a piece that I did for the Katonah Museum of Art in New York, right outside the city. And it was a temporary installation, but it is, I'm in the process of adapting it to be a permanent installation here in Atlanta, which I'll show you some images of that. This is my studio work that I've been doing the last few years, which I have a minimalist vocabulary, but the difference between me and minimalism is that I also have a narrative associated with it, whereas with minimalism there should be nothing. So these are my pieces that are personal to me. I use a lot of light that represents spirituality to me, and also you know, when I'm trying to talk about both the industrial or urban spaces that I've lived in and the more natural settings, I like the contradiction that light has, which is, you know, in the city it's artificial, and it has probably something to do with manufacturing, or anyway, this kind of light particularly, like a fluorescent light. But then, you know, the sun lights the sky, and then we have all the spiritual associations of light. This is an older piece that I put up for a patron to take a look at. It's a drawing, but I'm very fond of reflective surfaces also. This piece is made of dichroic glass, which is a glass that was manufactured for spacecraft, I believe in the 50s or 60s. And it is to essentially filter out half of the rays because of the heat. I have been working with bringing some of the natural materials into the studio. So we've got some bark that I took from a tree on my parents' property that's about 30 minutes from here. And again, like light and reflectivity, those are all elements that I think of as representing spirituality, or even, I think that my work has a strong influence of surrealism also, landscape painting, again, land art, eco art, what else? Yeah, I would say those are the things.
Right, you mentioned earlier that you had a temporary installation outside in New York. What does it look like for you to bring that to Atlanta? How will it change? Do you know?
Yes. So one of the things, and I'll go ahead and start this little PowerPoint, this set of images that I put together for you guys. The client wanted the piece. We were concerned about the pile of rocks being used by people to destroy other things, which is kind of interesting in like context of what's been happening. Because you want to, I don't know, I think with outdoor art, public work, you really have to think the worst of people. You have to imagine they're going to just like come up with the most terrible thing they could possibly do to the work or to someone else with the work. So essentially I've redesigned the piece so that rather than being loose rocks, it will have masonry work instead, but hopefully appear to be loose rocks by actually just putting the cement on the back of the stones. Let me see if I can get over here. Okay, so this is the work that I did for the Katonah Museum, which is comprised of local gravel and a structure piece that I made in my studio and had other fabricators work on. I transported to the site and mounted on top of this, I guess it's a plinth, but they gave me the location of the parking lot, which really bummed me out at first, but then I realized that if I used the same materials that were there, it would in effect extend the piece into the parking lot and make it a larger work in a way. So that was 4 months. This is a close-up. It's LED lights and mirrored plexi. And that changes colors. It cycles through the entire spectrum of colors. This is the image for the proposal for the permanent installation. Let me see if I have drawings. Oh, I didn't put my drawings in. Essentially, that is going to be a hollow form, kind of a cone structure with metal bracing on the inside. And then on top of that, there will be mortared rocks to create that work. And the electrical will be running inside of this rock pile and out the side. So, so anyway, so this is work that I did a couple of years ago. During COVID, I just decided to spend the next couple of months outside, which I had wanted to do anyway. It was like the perfect push out of the studio. And I started at the beach doing some drawings and basically making the beach my Zen garden for a few days. You know, these took a couple of hours maybe, but very relaxing, very enjoyable work. And the scale really appeals to me. I like the idea of making something that's feminine, but also very strong and powerful. And so the bigger that I can make something, the more powerful that it gets in my mind.
You mentioned that you spent a lot of time outside because of COVID, which I know I have. Did you have a specific beach that you went to when you went outside, or did you just, took any trip anywhere that you could go?
Well, I wound up, my parents have a rental beach house that I normally cannot get a hold of. It's always rented out. And so at the last minute, I was able to go down there with a friend, and the beaches were just completely vacant. We were the only people out there. So each day I was returning to the same beach, which is really right outside their door. So I was really fortunate. And they happened to have one of those rakes that you use to rake the turtle eggs. They just had it propped up, and I had said to myself on the way down, I hope I might need to go buy a rake. And then I got down there, and there was just a rake waiting right where I parked my car. So seemed meant to be.
Did you end up seeing any turtles?
I saw no turtles, but they're all over the place there. So very beautiful place. This is a detail shot.
And how are you taking these photos? Is it with a drone?
No, this is actually with my iPhone. I'm gonna have to stop that. I love the idea of just being impromptu and not having to drag more things with me out on these sites. Like, this is not an issue if it's, you know, right outside my parents' place, but you'll see in the other images I'm going to show, I have to hike in and carry materials with me. So if I can minimize what I'm taking, it's good. Like, to bring my big heavy cameras a little bit cumbersome. Yeah. And it kind of takes away the fun. I mean, it just does. It's like you have to think more. And also, some of these shots that I'll show you were, because I didn't have a drone, my partner figured out that we could mount my iPhone on one of those extension painting poles and extend it up about 30, 40 feet and take, you know, something that's closer to an aerial or a drone shot.
Wow.
So this is a piece, I'm working on creating a line that goes from one side of the mountain to the other. So this will go up and over. And when I was out there working, a couple of people asked what I was doing, and they offered to like add some stones. And I just said, just use your compass and keep south, like head south with the rocks. So next time I go back, I'll see, you know, what happened with that.
Did you leave a note for future hikers, or you just spoke to the people who were there?
I just spoke to the few people that were there, because the time that appeals to me most is in the morning, during the weekdays when nobody is there, which means that it's more isolated and more dangerous for me to be going. But I have been able to find a friend to go and just like hang out and draw, or, you know, play on their phone while I'm working. So, and then this piece, I figured a few things out with this work, which was, I started bringing a rake with me to the site. And yeah, so this piece, I don't think this one was taken from the pole, but this is probably about 40 feet wide, I think. And the lovely thing is people tend to not mess with the stones out there. Notice, like, people do build things out there, and I've noticed they stay around for a long time. So I'm not so rushed to complete a piece in one day. And then I think of these as portraits of the mountain, the ones that are coming up. They're just elements that describe this place to me, but with the added kind of surrealism that appeals to me, that expresses the magic of the place. This is a yucca plant blossom.
Oh, wow.
Which had fallen off and was hanging around. This is simply a reflection of the sky that's behind me. This is actually a larger mirror that I took out. It's a lot of dried wood out there. It's just completely sun bleached, and I love the symmetry of things in general. I'm completely addicted to symmetry, but I have to make myself not do too much of it. That gets boring.
Do you plan before you go out and take your hikes? Do you plan what you're going to do, or do you allow it to happen naturally as you interact with the materials in the space?
It's both. Because I have to decide before I go a little bit, because of what materials I'll be taking out with me. So like I wouldn't photograph with mirrors on the same day that I would be building like that big drawing with rocks, probably, but not too much. No, it's more impromptu.
And when you revisit a lot of these pieces, how does the weather and just the outdoors in general affect the piece? Do you notice that aside from people, is weather something and a factor that plays a lot into your pieces?
Yes, I would say that I will need to return to the site and rephotograph that larger piece with the rock drawing, because it was so flat and overcast. And I know I have been to the site enough that I realized I need to go out probably between 10 and 11 and photograph it when the shadows are long and the rock pattern will show up better, or late in the day. So depending on what it is, like this was towards the end of the day, it just really depends on the work itself. I mean, this was like the last thing I took. I probably only took 10 minutes to photograph this, and the sun was going down. And the place looks so different every single time I go there. It has just its own weather in a way. Like, it really has its own personality every single time I go there. It's very different depending on rainy, cloudy, has it been dry, has it just been raining? That's about it.
Well, if anyone has any questions that I haven't asked MaDora, you can go ahead and leave those in chat so that I can ask her. But I have a question myself, MaDora, which is, I know that you spoke a lot about femininity when we had a conversation a week ago. How do you engage with earthwork as it relates to expanding or increasing the amount of feminine materials that you use? What does that look like?
I feel like, so I like the idea of imposing some kind of pattern on the mountain, because you think of patterns as being feminine, or that's like a discipline. Pattern making, or pattern making is kind of a feminine discipline. Typically, that's a typical thing. But I love the idea of accentuating the curves of the mountain, for instance, and then you'll notice in the patterns they were curvilinear. The flower is very feminine. I think just even me doing the work outside is kind of a political statement in a way, because there aren't many women who are doing that kind of work. There are a few from the 70s that were doing it, but I did the little research and just didn't really see, there weren't too many women who were out there doing it. I know like a teeny handful of ladies up in New York that are doing it.
Why do you think that is, that there aren't a lot of women working outside in the same ways that you have worked outside?
I don't know. I can see I would do more of it, but I have to take someone with me to feel comfortable is one thing. Whereas I see men hiking out there and they are completely alone and they seem very comfortable. And me, even when I'm with someone, I'm looking over my shoulder the entire time because it is an isolated place. I don't know. I think probably there aren't that many people that are doing work outside that's temporary. There's probably more people doing public art and permanent installations is what I would imagine. I don't know. Maybe because it's more physical. I like the physicality of it. I like figuring out the logistics. That's one of the things that appeals to me about it.
That makes sense. I mean, you make a great point, which is, as a woman going out into an isolated place alone or with very few resources and people who can keep you safe, that's something that you still have to account for within your practice if your practice takes place in unfamiliar places, or at least familiar places with unfamiliar individuals. So that's something that as an artist, you're navigating well and you're safe. And so I thank you for being safe and being in your studio. A lot of the videos and a lot of the pictures that you showed us were outside. How are you going to utilize the courtyard space in Atlanta Contemporary as you progress with your outside temporary installations?
I'm going to get a load of rocks delivered and yeah, that's totally possible. I don't know. I'll definitely be trying to bring in more natural materials into the studio to incorporate into those pieces. And I have been working on some freestanding sculptures that are studio works as well that have rock involved. And but yeah, I haven't done anything in the courtyard yet, but who knows? It's the places I've been working have been nice because there's a plenitude of natural materials that I can use, which saves me a lot of labor of transporting.
Yeah, that's true. It's already out there and free and where it's supposed to be, for lack of a better word. All right, so since we're kind of getting close to the end of this studio tour and the next one starts at 3 o'clock, I just want to thank you for your time. And if everyone wants to unmute themselves and say hello to MaDora, they can. We appreciate you greatly.
Thanks, MaDora.
Thank you,
Lisa, for facilitating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, we'll see you in the next tour, hopefully.
Bye.